A lone wolf who takes pride in living on the fringes of society, the INFJ man isn't the type to want any sort of extra attention. Individualistic and free-spirited at heart, this type of man is okay with witnessing life behind the scenes. Yet when it comes to being completely overlooked by others, they may start to question if something is seriously wrong with them. Welcome or welcome back, psychos. Before we get into it, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed to our channel, as well as to click the post notification bell so you never miss a video. Alright, let's get right into it, starting with number 1. Because it's somewhat true. The first and most unfortunate reason why most INFJ men feel overlooked in society is because it's true. Have you ever been at a party with a friend or partner and realized that people gravitate to greeting them while completely ignoring your presence? Does being talked over, interrupted, or disregarded sound familiar? Or maybe you're often bumped into with complete disregard that you were even there. Well, you're certainly not alone. And unfortunately, it's not exactly an uncommon, relatable phenomenon amongst the INFJ male population. In fact, it's fair to say that although it would be easier and more comfortable to convince otherwise, these feelings of going unnoticed by others isn't all in their heads. They really are some of the less noticeable members of society, and sometimes for good reason. However, while it may seem to the INFJ man as if they're walking around with some sort of invisibility cloak, there are certain aspects of their personality that, when noticed, could easily be changed in times where they want to be seen. Number 2. They learned how to go unnoticed. It only takes a certain amount of weird looks, confusing follow-up comments, and unkind laughter for the INFJ man to realize that maybe they don't think in the same way as others. At an early age, their imaginative and introspective perspectives aren't viewed as too out of the norm, being surrounded by children whose imaginations are at their peak. However, slowly but surely, year by year, most INFJ boys build up this defense mechanism by preferring to not share their insights to their peers. They realize through the conversations and interests of their like-aged acquaintances that their minds are vastly different, making it much safer to go unnoticed than to be called out for this contrast. They learn to take the back seat in most conversations, observing how others act, what they talk about, and how they fit in so seamlessly. They become familiar with the benefits that come with being the observer rather than the one being observed. This ultimately results in the choice of being rather invisible to others, as being noticed becomes more and more uncomfortable. Which brings us to our next point. Number 3. Their chaotic upbringing made them feel invisible. Feeling safe is a major player in the INFJ's invisibility mechanism. While some of this was brought on by their unique perspectives and the fear of not being understood by their peers, home life can also be to blame. For many INFJ men, their upbringing and family dynamic may have instilled a belief that their problems were insignificant in comparison to the bigger issues their family was facing. Whether it was parental divorce, a troubled sibling, a family death, addictions, financial issues, or anything else that ultimately gained a tighter and tighter grip of the family's attention. The INFJ little boy who was brushed off in the most crucial years eventually came to understand that their struggles and wins were better off not being discussed by those around them. With the hopes of not burdening their family any more than they already are, the INFJ man learned to take it upon themselves to go unnoticed, a tactic that ultimately turned into a deep-set belief that they carry into adulthood. A perfect recipe for the conflict-avoidant INFJ. Number 4. They choose introspection over socialization. With observation comes introspection. And for the INFJ man, both of these lifelong habits contribute to their unnoticed presence. With constant deep thinking and reflection, it becomes inherent that maintaining a social life just isn't one of their main priorities. As we've said before, INFJs of any gender usually don't enjoy small talk or superficial conversations. In fact, if the topic of conversation isn't introspective or contributing to their thirst for knowledge in any way, it's fair to say that they much rather just spend their time conversing with the vastness of their own thoughts. Of course, this alone doesn't help their case of being overlooked by others, as they're not the go-to conversationalists for most people in their lives. However, when an INFJ man finds someone who's on the same wavelength as them, socializing doesn't hold the same dread as it usually does. Not to mention, when someone finds the INFJ's mind as fascinating as it is, they become noticed, or at times even infatuated with. Number 5. Selflessness. With extroverted feeling fueling their innate empathetic outlook, the INFJ man is known for their sheer selflessness. Known to be one of the more caring male personality types, INFJ men have a noticeable sensitivity towards others and their emotions that allow him a better understanding of just how their mind works. They can't help but to see the best in people, and even when the best is hard to find, the INFJ man manages to see through the noticeable struggle in order to focus on one's potential. While you may be thinking that such a compassionate human must be continually recognized for their caring behavior, the opposite is actually true. Since this type of man is so focused on understanding and supporting others, they tend to take the position of therapist to most people in their lives. They're always there for other people, but when it comes to sharing their own current struggles and challenges, it doesn't come as easily. Despite possibly having people in their life who would willingly listen, opening up is not exactly a strength of the INFJ man. They avoid burdening others with their feelings, and as a result, often end up feeling unnoticed and even uncared for. Number 6. They tend to lean towards being more passive than assertive. With empathy at play, the caring INFJ man never wants to come across as being aggressive or rude. While this is a good general rule of thumb when it comes to being a considerate human, taking the passive route can often lead to being walked over and dismissed by others. By avoiding conflicts and arguments by preferring to stay quiet, they come across as either snobbish, timid, or uninterested. Although they may gain a certain level of respect for demonstrating their laid-back, people-pleasing nature, it certainly doesn't go as far as communicating what they think. In fact, while their aura of mystery sometimes draws people's attention, it's in their communication style, or lack of, that tells people they're not worth paying any attention to. In fact, they say that life for the INFJ man is much more challenging than that of the INFJ woman for this exact reason. The expectation to be, quote-unquote, masculine by nature. Of course, most of the INFJ man's brilliance is configured within the facets of their own mind, but without the ability to take a stance on what they believe, set the necessary boundaries, and demonstrate a certain level of self-assurance, they have nothing to show for it. And lastly, number 7. They always read the room and adjust their demeanour accordingly. With a chameleon-like approach to communicating in social settings, the INFJ man is actually able to come across as much more outgoing than they really are. They don't always go unnoticed simply because they're too busy twiddling their thumbs, watching people socialize from the sidelines. In fact, their ability to utilize their extroverted feeling and sensing to adjust their social approach may just be the very reason they go unnoticed in most social outings. For example, if the INFJ man who is normally reserved and observant attends a gathering of outgoing individuals, they could easily switch on their upbeat, talkative attitude if they desired. To avoid being the center of attention by not fitting in, INFJ men eventually develop a very effective way of going unnoticed by whichever type of group they come up against. As a matter of fact, it becomes a completely subconscious performance, one that after years of practice goes completely unnoticed by the INFJ and everyone around them. Well, psychos, that's it for today. So, do you often feel invisible as an INFJ man when it comes to your presence within society? Let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video.